Hi, and welcome to episode 34 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Sunday the 29th of May 2016. Big hello to all the new subscribers and members of the Ravelry group. There's been a bit of a jump in numbers in the past week, which is lovely to see, and welcome back to returning viewers. The weather here has been a little bit crazy in the past week. Temperatures have dropped. The sun is finally shining today after some pretty drizzly weather, so the lighting in this video is going to be a little bit sporadic, but hopefully it works out okay. I'll get more into the weather in the blather at the end, but I've blasted the heater just before recording so that I can sit here without wearing a billion different layers. I mentioned last week that we were approaching 100 members of the Ravelry group, and we've managed to hit that magic number. So I have opened up a 100 member giveaway thread in the Ravelry group, so if you would like to become a member of the group, then pop by and then you can go into the drawing. You need to answer a little question in there for your chance to win a project bag. Now, this is not coming up properly on camera, but it's a project bag with balloons and snaps. So this is for those people who prefer not to have zippers on their project bags. It has a strap, and you can snap it open and you can fold down the top and use it as a little yarn bowl if you'd like to do that. So it has a cotton woven purple and white lining fabric. My Give Me a Crown label is on the inside, and it's perfect for small projects, socks, small shawls, 1 to 2 skeins, generally 1 skein, but you can definitely squeeze in a second, and possibly a bit of a third if you really want to. You can also fold down the top when you're putting it away so that things don't pop out of it. So pop by the Ravelry group and you can go into the drawing for that prize. It will be a random drawing from all the people who respond to the question, which is to describe your dream project bag. It's a little bit of market research for me, because I'm at the moment playing around with some different bag shapes and sizes and fabric choices and various things, so it's always good to know what kind of bags people are after, and it might eventuate in some new bags popping up in my Etsy shop. What else? So we have a local knit along running until July 9, so if you are knitting or crocheting or spinning something from fibre or a pattern that's local to you, then please pop by the Ravelry group and have a bit of a chat about what you're working on, and then post your finished objects in the finished objects thread for your chance to win some prizes. This week I have some knitting and some spinning. So to start off with finished objects, I have 3 finished objects, which is a bit of a surprise. A couple of them are kind of small, so the first one though is my broken seed stitch socks. So I've been showing these on the podcast for a little while as I've been working on them, and this is a free pattern by Hanna Leväniemi, a Finnish designer, and it's more of a recipe rather than a sock pattern as such, because you do need to know a little bit about sock construction, but I like the way they turned out. It's great for variegated yarns. So I've got this sort of white and grey variegated yarn with the red, and they've turned out good. So they're going in my present pile. I finally figured out who they're going to, and that sort of helped, I think, with getting the sock finished, knowing who was going to be the recipient. So they will be heading back over to Finland later in the year. I also cast on and finished up a project which was a bit of an emergency knit because it was getting cold, and I did a bit of a search for knitted slipper patterns, and surprisingly the one that I picked was also by Hanna Leveniemi. So she's obviously a very popular pattern maker, because it popped up when I was searching on Pinterest. So I have made some simple garter stitch slippers, which look like this. So these were a very quick knit. I knit these over about 24 hours, sort of picking it up and putting it down and going again. I had this Morris & Sons Norway 14 ply that I had picked up a few years back in Sydney. It's 100% Australian wool, 120 meters to 100 grams, and I had crocheted a very failed beanie out of this yarn at one point, probably 4 years ago, I think. I hadn't really been crocheting that many hats, and this is a very chunky yarn, and I didn't really take that into account. So what I ended up with was a bit of a kind of a bowl, and when I tried to put it on my head, it left indents on my forehead, so it never really got used. And as I was going through some of my boxes recently, I bumped into it and decided that it should be unravelled and made use of. So I unravelled that, and then I had a second ball of the yarn, and then the crocheted trim is the same yarn as on my, I can't remember what I call this, my turtle vest or something. And yeah, so I just picked up a colour of yarn that I thought would look nice. So it's sort of an orangey brown kind of colour. These slippers are good. They're nice and chunky, so I adjusted the pattern because it's for fingering weight held double, and I sort of did a little bit of knitting just to sort of see how many stitches I was getting my gauge, and then adjusted the cast on stitches. So I've put my notes in my Ravelry projects page if you're interested, if you're thinking about using a chunkier yarn for the slippers. I probably should have knit these just a little bit longer, because at the moment I am wearing doubled up knitted socks, so chunkier weight socks, and at the moment these sort of fit one pair of socks rather than two, but I think with a little bit of time they'll ease up, and I'm definitely going to be making myself some more of these, and probably for gifts as well. It was a nice quick knit, and I think they turned out quite nice. I'm not fussed, I'm not worried about the heel. It's a bit of a pointy little heel. It doesn't seem to be slipping off or causing any problems for me, so I know that some people prefer a much more rounded heel, but I think that there might be some of the past projects on Ravelry that you can look at for some instructions on how to adjust that. But they're my little simple garter stitch slippers. That's what they are. So this video is having a few stops and starts today because there's a dog barking in the background, but I'll try to keep going. So my last finished object is a little spin. It was with one of the roll lags that I got from Fondant Fibre that I showed off last week, and I also spun up some undyed fibre from Half Baked Hand Dyed, and I spun them up on my drop spindle, and this time instead of trying to ply on my drop spindle, I plied on my wheel, and it was so much easier. I used exactly the same setup of my box with the toilet roll sort of toilet rolls holding my singles, and it worked a treat. So I've come up with this yarn. So it has little bits of green and brown, and just a barber pole effect. So the barber pole is just the two colours spinning around each other, and I think it turned out alright. There's some little bits of sparkliness in there which I don't think the camera is going to capture. No, it's not coming up, but there is some sparkly sort of gold sparkles in there, and I spun this as a worsted yarn, so I was squeezing out all the air, keeping all the fibres sort of together when I was spinning it on the drop spindle, and also when I was plying it, and it's come out pretty consistent. I'm pretty happy with that. There are some bits where it's not quite so even, which you can see there, but overall it's pretty consistent, and I'm happy with that. So over time I will be trying some more of those roll lags and trying some different techniques perhaps, or at least some different plying methods and what have you. With the colder weather, I ended up having to put the skein on my yarn Swift, and drying it on that. It was the only way that I could figure out, sort of having it near the heater and trying to get it dry, because there was no way it was drying outside when there was so much moisture in the air and it was raining and all sorts of craziness. So on to my works in progress. I have been working on my Breathing Space pullover, which is a pattern by Veera Välimäki, and I'm up to there. So for some reason it just keeps feeling like it's not growing, but it is actually growing, because now I can't really fit it into the camera. I have completed all of the Dappled Pony stripes. So the Dappled Pony is this speckled yarn in here, and I've used up 70 grams of the Dappled Pony for this body, and then I'm going to be using it for the sleeves. So I think I should have some leftovers, which I'm very excited about, because I always love leftover fingering weight yarns. I can use them for my sock yarn blanket and other things. So now I've got a section of the grey to go on with, and then the sleeves. So I think I've been knitting this for about a month now, and I think I've probably got about another month to go. So if I was working on it monogamously, then it would have been done by now. But it's a fun thing just to pick up and do a few stripes on, and then do a few more stripes, and then do a few more. So it is knit with, did I say Miss Click Clack yarn, and it's how much I have of the second skein of the grey. I still have some of the first skein left, which I'm going to use for the top of the sleeves, and then I'll swap over to this one during the stripe section. So that's that one. I have also been working on my block socks. So these are for the Miss Click Clack tricolour block sock cowl knit along. I've got a toe, just a tiny little toe. So I decided that I had to get my Broken Seed Stitch socks finished. So these ones didn't get much love. I have finished the first sock, but I'll probably be working on the second one this week and see how that one goes. I have also been working on my sock yarn blanket, so I haven't showed this for quite a few weeks now, but I have been adding some squares, so I'll see if I can find them. I have to remember where I was up to when I last showed it. I think I was probably up to that one last time. So there's a couple of sock yarns that I knit them a while ago, so I can't remember exactly what they are, but I can dig up the details if you're interested in these too. Then there's a Circus Tonic handmade yarn, which is called, I have the tag beside me, it is called White Browed Wood Swallow, and these ones were sent to me by a lovely viewer of the podcast. This one is a Patterns Croy sock, and this one is a West Yorkshire Spinners yarn. I have also added in a couple more at the bottom, so I've started a new row, and this one is the hand spun that I showed last week. So I decided to add that in. It's a little bit thicker than a fingering weight yarn, but it's okay. Once I get the other squares in around it, it sort of evens it out. You can see sort of it going from the purple to the pink, and I'm actually really happy with how that turned out. So I'm going to do some more experimenting with sort of using rollags that are sort of predominantly one colour and then another one in order to create the striping effect. And then I got my Malice, Hedgehog Fibres Malice yarn in here, so it's coming up really dark on screen, but it's my beautiful browns that I knit my my Malice gloves from. So it was nice to get that in there, and I think that there's a few other fingering weight yarn projects that I need to get in here. So my blanket, and I think it's because it's been so cold that I've been enjoying working on it, but it's kind of big. I'm thinking that in one direction it might be as wide as it needs to be, and I'm just going to keep making it longer so that it's sort of a one-person blanket, and then I can always make it wider if I want to. But I've been seeing a lot of other blankets around on Instagram and in podcasts, so I'm kind of itching to start another scrappy project. The Granny Square scrappy blankets look pretty fun, but we'll see. And I've also cast on a new project. So I was showing the Adagio Mills alpaca yarns last week and the week before, I think. So these are from a local mill to me, and they look like these. So there's a sort of a grey, beautiful greys, and then a dark brown, because I like my browns. And I've been sort of umming and ahhing about what kind of shawl pattern to knit with these. So I found one, and I'll try to show it on my iPad, and it's called the Maluka shawl, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry, and it has this sort of lace edge, and then I think it's a garter, no, stockinette top section, but you actually start knitting from the bottom on the lace section. And from reading some of the project notes, they were saying that they'd use 2/3 of their skein for the lace section, so I figured that that's it's a good way for me to start with one yarn, and then I'm losing my voice. Start with one yarn, use up the whole of that, and then I should not require the whole of the second yarn. It's a sort of a basic lace repeat over and over, and this is how far I've got. It looks like this. Lace is always hard to show up on camera without something behind it. but there are eyelets. There's sort of fun other little features in there, and I'm just going to keep knitting away until I get close to running out of the grey, and then I'll use the brown for the body of the shawl. I'm loving this Adagio Mills yarn. I know that some people have sort of sensitivities to alpaca, but there's just something magical about the feel of this. It's soft without being cloud-like. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I love it. I was a bit worried that the alpaca might not show up the lace pattern well enough, but I think it's already looking okay, and then once it's blocked, it'll be even more spectacular. But yeah, so I'm happy with that. I'm happy that I found a pattern that I can kind of gauge that I use up the majority of my yarns. It is a free pattern and it has a few flaws in it, so if you are going to give it a whirl, then I suggest reading through some of the past projects to see what other people have said. Because it is free, I can show the chart, and it uses some non-standard sort of symbols, which are a little bit confusing. I thought about rewriting this in sort of more standard notation, but once I've repeated it a few times, it sort of seems to be sticking in mind. I haven't got the 12 rows stuck in my head completely, but I think with a few more repeats I should be there. So that's that project, and I think that's it for all my knitting and spinning and what have you. I have been doing a fair bit more than what I normally would, because I'm allowing my brain to play around with ideas for the Etsy shop, and sort of taking some time to experiment with those, and then sort of picking up my knitting, and while I sit and ponder, I can sort of knit while I think about other things. It's just something I do. So yeah, so it's been fun, and I have been crawling under the covers to do a fair bit of that while it's been cold. So I'm obviously on to the chatter part of the podcast, so if you're not interested, thank you for watching. I was happily surprised to see on the Lou Lee knitting podcast that she had spun up the same braid of fondant fibre that I had picked up, the Deep and Meaningful fibre. Hers turned out amazing, and I'm still a little bit hesitant, just because of the amount of colours in there, but seeing somebody else having spun the same fibre definitely sort of eases that concern, especially about those very bright yellows that were in there. I don't know, fluoro just sort of scared me a little bit, but her yarn turned out amazing. And she also did a test of sort of the washability of the yarn, because it's a super wash yarn with nylon, and she put it through the washing machine, so that was very interesting to see how little effect that had on her hand spun. Through her sort of gentle nudge and a few other gentle nudges that I've had lately, I've been trying to get a sense of what my spinning wheel actually is, because it was a sort of a second or third hand spinning wheel where I bought it from somebody who'd been given it by somebody else, and I had no idea what it was. Didn't even think to ask when I was getting it, because it was a sort of a Christmas present, and I was just excited by the idea of getting myself a spinning wheel. But I went to the Ashford website, and I found a timeline of their spinning wheels and the different looks to the spinning wheel. So I have a feeling that it might actually be an Ashford, and it might be from around 1981. I think that some of the parts have possibly been swapped over time, but it means that I might be able to get myself a bigger flyer and bobbin onto it at some point. So I'm still sort of, I've spent my birthday money and I am just sort of settling in after my house move, which there was a lot of expenses involved with that. So hopefully soon I will have saved up for getting myself a bit of an upgrade to my spinning wheel. I would love a brand new spinning wheel, but I think that that's a fair bit in the distance, and at least getting a jumbo flyer and bobbin will keep me happy for a little while, because I do love my spinning wheel, and I'm making yarn with it. So yeah, I think it just needs a little bit of TLC and a few new parts. The garden, or my gardening, sort of seems to be not freaking out from the cold weather. I've had the beetroot pop up, and there's 3 different types of beetroot, and they've all popped up. The thyme and the dill have popped up, and the spinach has been growing. So they're sort of, before the cold snap, they'd popped up and they've just stayed there. So I was a little bit worried that they would die, but they seem to be okay at the moment, and I'm just hoping that they get a little bit more growth in them, and then in some weeks' time I'll be able to eat something. What else? My computer freaked me out this morning. It had a little message saying that the battery wasn't happy, that it didn't have the capacity that it should or something, and I should replace it. So I'm a little bit worried that the cold weather is getting to my poor computer, and I've got no idea where to get computer parts out here, whether I just get a new battery or whatever. So that's something fun to investigate. But yeah, it's one of the joys of having moved to a different place, and I think I've got a little bit of that homesickness feel, that I've now been living here for longer than what I would ever take a holiday for. So I think the reality is setting in. Maybe it's cold weather as well, and that I am living out in the countryside, and I miss my friends and the things that I used to do in Sydney. And I think I'm also a little bit homesick for Finland, because I've been watching all these wonderful Finnish knitting podcasts out there, and so I'm homesick for Finland, and I'd love to go and see my relatives. And it's crazy because I mean, at this time of year it would be beautiful, with the spring coming up, but I love going over in winter, and the winter over there just seems completely different to what's not even winter yet here. The cold temperatures, I guess I was a lot more rugged up when I was visiting Finland, and my relatives would give me their winter clothing to sort of bulk up with, and the houses there are properly warmed, and I'm still getting used to trying to figure out how to warm this place in a good way. So anyway, I am rambling, a little bit homesick for 2 different places, and I think that I am going to get this video edited from all the dog barking and what have you. No roosters this week though, which is a surprise, but there's the dog barking again. I am going to get this video up. I will make myself a huge pot of soup for this evening, and then it can feed me for the next few days. So I think I've got potato, pumpkin and swede. Winter always makes me want to make lots and lots of soup, so that's on the cards. And then I'm going to knit, because that's all I really want to do while it's this cold. And tomorrow's Monday. I'm going to work, get some of these new bag ideas sort of rolling along a bit more, so that I can hopefully get them up into the shop soon. But if you haven't already, then pop by the Ravelry group, become a member and take part in the member giveaway if you'd like to win a project bag. and I'll see you soon.